Hi everyone, this is Brayden. I wanted to do a video concerning my DMing process as well as kind of introduce and log a story that I am doing for a few friends of mine. We're running a new Dungeons and Dragons campaign with the 5th edition setting. And I spent a lot of time working out this campaign. I felt that I wanted to share it with everyone. I didn't have the equipment necessary to record our session. I hope someday I do have the necessary materials to do that. But at this time, I just wanted to basically have this moment where I can just share the story with you guys and tell you exactly what happened. So, I've been running Dungeons and Dragons campaigns since 2016. I think early 2016, like in January, is when I started actually doing Dungeons and Dragons. And I've DM'd a few campaigns, but recently I've got to the point where I've completed 3 campaigns in a row for my friends. And those campaigns that we ran were Storm King's Thunder, Tyranny of Dragons, and then Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden. And we've had a lot of fun doing that, but I wanted to do something new, something unique. So I started homebrewing a campaign setting based off of a character that one of my friends wanted to play, one of my best friends. He wanted to play this prince who was the he was the next in line for a kingdom based out of the Shadowfell. So I did a lot of research and learned a lot about how the Shadowfell works, about dread domains and stuff, and I constructed this story about around this character. And then my other friends who want to be a part of the campaign, they made their own characters, and I took the time to integrate them and their backstories and everything into the story. And the campaign I came up with was there is this dread domain within the Shadowfell called Wispvalley. It's essentially a valley in between a large range of mountains that are surrounded by the mists. And within this valley are a number of towns and this entire civilization that this campaign is based off of. And my characters are Ander Skyless Numitor III. It's the third to bear his name. He's the Prince of the Domain. And the crux of the story is that his father mysteriously went missing, the king of the realm, Ander II. And so my cast of characters are Ander III, his cousin, Matthias, the royal artificer, who's a character called Tobias Decanth. He's from Eberron and has found himself living in this domain by chance. And the last character, because it's a 4-person party, is this individual named Ward. And he is this oracle of sorts for the valley. And he comes whenever there is a time of crisis or a new king is set to take the throne. And so I started off this campaign by going over the setting, how Wispvalley is one of the is a place known for hearth and home. It's supposed to be one of the good domains, even though there isn't a lot of precedence for there to be good dread domains, because each domain is built off of Dark Lords, and I will get into that in a later video. But 4 weeks prior to the start of the campaign, Andrew II, the king and lord of the realm, mysteriously vanished, and no one knows exactly where he went. But in his absence, the day that he went disappearing, these 4 red orbs, called that the populace are calling these crimson orbs, appeared above 4 cities within the realm. And the cities are called Devil's Horn, Dragon's Maw, Titan's Rest, and Wolf's Head. They've also, the capital of the valley, Wispvalley, has gotten reports from a number of these cities about certain events happening. Devil's Horn is under attack by multitudes of living spells who have taken over their magical academy there, the Devil's Sight Academy, and a vast majority of their mages, who are known as the Inferni, have either gone disappearing or been killed. And in Dragon's Maw, the person in charge there hasn't been heard from in 4 weeks, and the city has also been completely quiet. The the seneschal of Wispvalley, who took over in place of Andrew II while he's missing, is Andrew III's uncle, Warner, and he's taken over as the regent to help to maintain the valley until Andrew III can be crowned king. And so he sent out scouts to retrieve information from Dragon's Maw, but none of those scouts have returned. So any word on the comings and goings of that city are non-existent at this point. So no one really knows what's happening in Dragon's Maw. For the other 2 cities, Titan's Rest, its lord, the lord of it, arrived in Wispvalley and advised that it had been overrun by hordes of undead, a mixture of a bunch of ghouls, and they were led by a death giant known as the Soul Scourger. And that lord is currently residing in Wispvalley until time he heads back there to reclaim his city. And then the last city that has an orb hovering above it is this town called Wolf's Head. And Wolf's Head is being attacked by a pack of lycanthropes, and the city is currently in lockdown because attacks are becoming rampant, and they're trying to keep lycanthropes from infiltrating the city and performing any deeds that would cause issues there. But with all that being said, another event that is happening is that the Queen of the realm, Queen Suzette, has been accused by Darius Bernholt, the Lord of Titan's Rest, of being involved in the disappearance of her husband, Andrew II, because he has a device called the Watcher's Telescope, and it is used to monitor the realm and determine threats that it is facing. And according to him, he saw that Queen Suzette was having a conversation with her husband and another unknown individual, and they disappeared at that point. And so she is suspected as a responsible party, and that is the setting. And so Andrew III's uncle, Warner, is currently has been declared the seneschal, and the seneschal's job is to maintain the council and the city until such a time that Andrew III, the king, is found, or Andrew III is able to undergo his crowning. So that is the predicament that the campaign started in. And so I moved on to introduce my characters. And the first one I introduced was Matthias, the cousin. And Matthias has been having nightmares for the past month about an event that happened to him in his past, where he was kidnapped by this raven-like creature, a servant of the Raven Queen, which I've called a Valravn. And it captured him about 3 weeks ago and brought him into the mists. And he met one of the other characters, Matthias, not Matthias, Tobias. He met this other character, Tobias, who's one of the player characters, and they were able to escape the mists and the creature when they encountered an unknown individual who gave Matthias a cloak of raven's feathers and Tobias a scroll case that has a commission that he's supposed to complete whenever the case opened, which was at an unspecified time. But the Cloak of Raven's Feathers was able to return them to the valley, and they're one of the few people who have ever wandered into the mists from Wispvalley and ever returned. So I started with Matthias, and he had a dream of this event. And in the dream, he was attacked by the Valravn, and he lost sight of Tobias, and he was alone. And then the dream faded, and he was in darkness, and then this white raven's feather appeared flying above him. And he grasped it and immediately awoke, and he found that the feather was still in his room. And so the feather is magical. It has this aura of all explosive magic around it. And it's white, but not albino. It's like pure white. Like there's this aura, there's a sense of cleanliness about it. She doesn't know exactly what that is yet. And so he went to go speak with his friend Tobias. And then I moved on to Tobias. And Tobias is this artificer who's living with his girlfriend, Yvonne. And he was getting around on his day, trying to figure out what he was going to do, and then he noticed that the scroll case that he's had for 3 years had popped open. And inside of it, he found these blueprints for a key shaft, just the shaft of a key that ended in a kind of like a ballpoint pen. So it's a key shaft that's also a pen. And on the blueprints, it had 4 materials that he needed to gather. A tooth of the first curse of Wispvalley, the scale of a scaleless dragon, the flesh of a construct once man, and metal from a death giant's sword. Or death giant's weapon. And also on the blueprints, there was a signature on the blueprints that was the signature of his mother, Viola de Canith, who was also an artificer, and she was trying to figure out a way to navigate the plains and enter um, the mists that had taken Seer in Eberron. That was her job. And so he found that she had her signature on this blueprint that he found. And he sent a message to his mother asking if she had any blueprints missing. But I haven't given him a reply yet. So, after he looked at the blueprint and started examining it, Mateus arrived, and they talked for a little bit. Mateus showed him the feather that he'd found, and Tobias was able to determine that it was magical. It had all those different auras surrounding it, and he was cast to identify on it, and I also advised him that it was a piece of an item called the Cloak of White Raven's Feathers. And this is the same cloak that that Mateus had when he escaped the mists, but that cloak had faded into the wind. The feathers had faded into the wind when they had arrived in the domain, so he didn't have it any longer. So there's about, I think it's 20 or 200,000. I can look. 200,000 of those feathers. And so he was surprised by that number and was trying to figure out what he needed to do. And then they received a knock on the door. And this is where I introduced the third character, this individual called Ward. He's the Oracle of Wispvalley, and he only arrives in times of need. And so he arrived at the door and he was like, look, you are all part of a bigger picture, and I need you as well as Andrew the Third to come with me where needed. And this is a matter of great importance. And the characters they bought what he was saying, and so they went with him, and I introduced a little bit of the city, and they arrived at the castle, and the castle has the only entrance in the castle is this giant causeway that's a massive elevator of dwarven construction, and they had to take this elevator up to the entrance of the keep. And the guards were kind of questioning who they are. They're eyeing Ward because they're not exactly sure of who he is. But they do know Tobias and Mateus. So they bring them into the castle, and then I transition to introduce the final member of the party, Ander Numitor III. And I open up with him in the garden of his castle. There's this large garden that was built by his ancestors in the castle proper. And he's sitting on a bench in front of this large white bark tree that has these reddish-black blossoms. And ever since his father disappeared 4 weeks ago, the blossoms have started to fall. And so it's filling him with this, I sort of described how it was filling him with this sort of existential dread, and how he was thinking back to the time that he last saw his father, how he observed that his mother and father were speaking with this man dressed in elegant yellow robes. He didn't know who he was. His father had a look of worry on his face, but he told him everything was fine. He should go get some rest. And Ender didn't think anything of it and walked away. And the day after, his father had gone missing, and so I kind of instilled this sense of despair in his character starting off, how he was feeling if he had only done something or stayed and watched or just did anything, that he might have been able to have some inkling of what happened to his father, but he knows nothing. And talking about, he was sitting there and he was about to just walk off and start losing himself in a maze in the garden, just trying to collect his thoughts. And then he noticed that Ward had arrived. And Ward is a very interesting character. He's very cryptic. He likes to talk, and he likes to be mysterious and cryptic. And he starts off by saying that this exact place was the last time I saw your father, which made Ander react a little hostile, and he casted create bonfire under his feet, and the fire started, and Ward just neglected to react to it and kind of just stood there for a few seconds before walking out of the bonfire to make a point that he was important. And then he addressed all three of the other characters and said, I am here because your father, Ender the Second, didn't listen to me. And so he tells Ander the Third and Mateus and Tobias that he had come there about 3 months prior to speak with Ander the Second. And he had told him that this disaster was coming. He could feel it within the mists. Because the mists are... The Shadowfell is connected to Ward in this strange way that I don't want to disclose until later on, because the characters will figure it out at the same point that I reveal it. But he tells him that he came to his father and advised him that basically everything was heading towards disaster. And Ender the Second didn't take the necessary precautions. He decided to move up the crowning of his son, but the day hadn't come yet. It's still technically 2 months off from the current point of the campaign, and then his father disappeared before he could crown his son king. But that in itself was strange. That in itself is strange, because in reality, it should have been probably 12 more years until Ander the Third was crowned, because he's only 21 in game, and he should be in his 30s before he's crowned king, because he needs more knowledge and learning and experience before he can take on the duties of the realm. But his father had tried to move it up before his disappearance. So Ward gets them all in a safe, quiet place. They go to Ander's bedroom. And then one of my players, I think it was Tobias, he casted a rope trick. And everyone climbed up the rope into this little pocket dimension. And then Ward conducted this reading. And I constructed this reading out of the Taroka deck. And the player character who's playing Ward was kind enough to actually perform the reading himself. I'd done it with him prior, and he decided to kind of write it out for himself, and he was going to present it in his own way rather than the way I had done it. And I was okay with that. So he performed this scene where he read these cards, and through the cards, the party determined that they drew 7 cards. The first 3 pertain to items that they had to acquire in order to find out where King Ander II had disappeared to. The first item is I want to read this the way he described it. The first item is a key. Sorry, the first 3 items are things that they need. So the first is a relic possessed by one of Ander's ancestors. And I gave each of them a clue as to where these items can be found. The first item is supposed to be in the lair of a great and ancient spider-like creature. And I gave them hints that it was beneath leaves of ancient trees and things like that, and they came to determine that it was probably in the forest on the map that they have access to. So that was the first card. The second card is for a key. Not the same key that the key shaft belongs to, but a separate key that is supposed to open any type of lock. And that key is located in a great vault where many treasures dwell, and it's a place to which only mages would have access to it. So they come to the conclusion that this would be in Devil's Horn in the Mages Academy there. And then the third is this ancient telescope, which I've alluded to before, used by this group called the Watchers of the Realm, or the Watchers. But it is currently in, the way I described it, it's within the site. Wait. The telescope is in the eyes of an eyeless dragon, and they need to go seek it where their kin have died. And so they came to the conclusion that that must be Dragon's Maw, because the city is within a ring of lake that's kind of shaped like a eye of some sorts, and it is a resting place of dragons. There's also dragon riders that dwell there, so they came to the conclusion that that must be where the third key is. I didn't try to make the clues too difficult, but at least for those items. But for the other cards that they drew, the fourth card was for an ally who would join them in their expedition. And the card that they drew was the Mists card. And for the text for that, it says that their ally is a stranger from even stranger land that is in a place beset by fiends. And I used fiends as a play for Devil's Horn, and they, of course, picked up on that, and they're like, it must be there, or it could be somewhere else. But they thought that their ally might be there, or they might encounter them somewhere else. They weren't greatly, they didn't seem too invested in finding their ally immediately. But they have an inkling of where they could find them. And then the last 3 cards that they drew are 3 enemies that are pursuing them. The first is described as a fallen idol who believes that their deaths shall be its salvation, and that this creature has a bunch of misforgotten followers which follow them. And I've given out hints for this, of who this might be, but not really. Not the hints that I give are more hints to their identities rather than their locations. Second one was a ghost who I described as a Ronin who walks the domains of dread, and that he pursues them with the spirits of the dead in tow. And then lastly, the last enemy that they drew was the Tempter card. And the Tempter card is supposed to pertains that an ally of theirs is actually an enemy and seeks to stab them in the back at some point. So they need to be careful of who they trust during their adventures. Now, after they drew the cards, they had this moment where they started talking about it and they had a round table basically where they talked about where the locations of the keys might, or the items might be, where their ally might be located, and and theorized at who the identities of their enemies might be. And after that, something I should mention is Ward, the Oracle, took notice that Anders' eyes are purple, which he also made a point to state that no one in Anders' family has ever had purple eyes before, which comes into play. They left the room because the first place they wanted to go was to Wolf's Head, because Wolf's Head is where Anders' wife is located. Her name is Jessamine. So he wants to go to Wolf's Head because it's currently being attacked by lycanthropes, and he wants to rescue her and make sure that she's safe. He doesn't have to worry about her. And the party was basically okay with that because they figured they already need to go in that direction because Wolf's Head is surrounded by this forest called the Duskwood, and that's where they figure one of the keys is, or one of the items that they need. So, Mateus goes off to make some silver bullets because I gave him a gun since he's from Eberron. So he has this pistol of his that he wants to use. So he went off and made some bullets. Mateus went off to buy some supplies, and while they were moving to go out, Anders' uncle Warner encountered them and kind of took Ander off to the side and inquired what they were doing, asked him if he needed any help. He understood why they were leaving. He was very considerate, and he also gave them some money, and then told them a couple rumors in the town of things that they were dealing with. One of them was that the castle's vault had been broken into by this thief called the Wispvalley Phantom, or the Wispvalley Phantom, and they hadn't been able to determine his location, so that was something that they could look into. Other than that, there was a guard working in the castle who was a family friend of theirs who had been missing for several days. She had taken leave, but she hadn't returned after her leave had ended. And so, since she was a family friend, he asked Ander if he could look into it because he was curious whether or not she was okay. So they took those rumors to heart, and they actually went looking into the disappearance of the guard. But before that, Ward, after Warner was done talking with Ander, Ward took Warner off to the side and had a private conversation with him, which was a little heated. There was a lot of meta in the conversation because I, playing as a mourner, know certain things, and then my friend Easton, playing Ward, also knew certain things concerning the campaign. So they had a kind of back and forth a little bit. And the other players overheard some of it, but not all of it, and they didn't really understand any of it. But it was fun for me to do that just because it pertains to things that could play out in the future. And so after that encounter, Ward and Ander went off to the tower cells in the castle, where they wanted to speak with Ander's mother. And so they had a conversation with her. Ander really wanted to check up on her, ask her some questions, because he hadn't really spoken with her since his father's disappearance, because she had been placed in jail. And he'd felt bad about everything that had happened. But they kind of had a conversation about what had happened that night. And the queen, Suzette, she basically told them she wasn't there that night. Whoever was there with her father and that strange individual wasn't her. She was in her room, relaxing. There wasn't really anyone who could pertain or support her side of the story, but she was trying to be truthful with them, and I believe both Ward and Ander believed her, because she was pretty adamant about it. And she'd even said that she couldn't. She wished she could tell them that was her, because she might have clues as to where Ander's father was, but she couldn't tell them anything because she didn't know anything about that. So after that conversation, Ward wanted to take a moment to have a private conversation with her. And so I stepped aside, and the two of them had a conversation about Ander's eyes. And this is a pretty interesting part of the story, because the circumstances of Ander's birth were that the queen, Suzette, she was not able to have a child, and unbeknownst to Ander, actually both the king and the prince, Ander II and Ander III, she met with a holy woman called Andromeda, who was a priestess, a cleric of the Raven Queen, and they conducted a ritual, which resulted in Ander III being born. But there were some circumstances of that. Chief amongst them being the purple eyes. And basically what that pertains is the context of it is that Ander is supposed to take the throne as Ander III of the realm, but the ritual conducted by Suzette in order to have him also bound him to the Raven Queen in some way. And so Ward was basically grilling her on, why would you do this? This has messed everything up. And her reply was that she didn't want Ander to be a puppet anymore. She wanted him to be free and be able to do his own decisions. She wanted to get him out from under the thumb of Ward and his masters. And Ward didn't like that answer and threatened her with her gonna die a very horrible death, and then left the room. And Ander was a little displeased about that conversation because his mother had been upset. But after all that, they started doing some investigating. Ander, Ward, and Tobias met up at the guest estate, which was currently housing the Bernholt family. And the Bernholts are the lords of Titan's Rest. And essentially, they went there and they had some questions, particularly about what Darius Bernholt, the Lord of Titan's Rest, has seen in the Watcher's telescope, and also to ask him if he knew where the telescope was located. But essentially, he told them the same story, how he was looking through the telescope that night and he saw what I had described before of Ender's mother and his father speaking with this strange individual who was clothed in yellow and yellow robes. Couldn't see any distinguishing features or anything, but essentially what happened is the individual knocked out Ender the Second with some spell, and then he grabbed Ender the Second and Queen Suzette by the shoulders, and then they teleported out. And so that's why he suspects that the Queen has something to do with the King's disappearance. So with that context, they talked a little bit more, and Ender also had a conversation with Darius's daughter, Diana. And part of her backstory is Diana has some unrequited feelings for Ender from when they were from their childhood. But they're good friends. So they were talking, and Ender tried to recruit her to join their group, or at least help them with their mission. And he rolled a very decent persuasion check. He rolled a 27 or 28. So I am of the mind that he probably succeeded on that check. So Diana is going to have a conversation with her father. She was going to go with her family to Titan's Rest to help liberate Titan's Rest from the Death Giant and its its undead army. But I think she's going to have a conversation with her father about going with Ander and his group. So after that, the party finally went and linked up with Mateus, and they started doing some investigating. They went to the barracks asking about the guard that went missing. Her name is Forewarn Summerlock. So they went there and they spoke with the general of the barracks, asking some questions. He didn't know too much, so he directed them towards a friend of hers. And they were able to determine that, or they were able to get some information, particularly that Forewarn had been offered a job, or a side gig, basically. She's part of a mercenaries guild called the Thunder Dragons Guild. They come out of they don't have a name themselves, but they work out of a place called the Thunder Dragons Guild Hall. Other than that, they learned that she had taken 5 days off, and that she had told her friend, her co-worker, that she was going to get enough gold. She was going to get enough gold from the job to where she could probably retire. So that was a lot for them to go off. From there, they went off to her home, and they investigated her house. They found that she had some items missing from her wardrobe, so she had packed a few things. And they also noticed that there was traces of dried clay on the welcome mat and the doorstep. And one of my characters, Ward particularly, decided to taste the clay. And I rolled to see if it had any magical potency left, and it did. And so the effect was that he lost about 5 minutes of memory, or about 30 minutes of memory. And so he forgotten how they got. So he basically didn't remember how they got into the house. So that was interesting. Another item that they found in the house was a letter that had been sent to her. And basically it was from this individual named Norman telling her, hey, meet me at the North Gate every morning. The job should only take about 2 or 3 days. And it also indicated that they were going to this place called Aegis Ravine. So, with that information, the party went outside because Aegis Ravine was only about a 3-hour walk from Wispvalley. So they left the city and walked to Aegis Ravine. And so at Aegis Ravine, they found this cave, this place called the Story Cave, which has a bunch of cave paintings about an event told about in the history of the valley, about how the valley was attacked by these demon-like creatures, and then this angel appeared in their time of need, shoved their shield into the ground, and then all the demons were locked up into the crevice, which is where the Aegis Ravine was formed out of. Ward had a moment where he was scoffing and saying that it was all propaganda, which was kind of funny. But after some investigating, they found an indentation in one of the cave drawings, and with their investigation, they found that there was a sentinel shield hidden in the cave, left over by whoever had drawn them. And so the party got a sentinel shield, which the artificer took as his own. And from there, they kept searching, and they eventually found this pool of water. And near the pool was this tiefling who didn't remember who she was or how she got there. The only thing that she remembered was that she pulled herself out of the water, and when she did, she could see that there was a cart leaving from the scene with a bunch of clay packed in it. And so the party, after cleaning her up a little bit because they were wary about the clay itself, they cleaned her up, and then they followed the wagon tracks, which due to some good rolls, the tracks were pretty deep, and so they were able to find that the cart moved through the terrain, and instead of going back to Northgate, which is where it had come from, it came around and entered the city back through the East Gate, which is where they lost track of it. From there, they handed off the Tiefling Guard forewarned to some of her associates who were also guards, and then they went to the Thunder Dragon Guild Hall to see if they could get some final answers. When they went there, they inquired if anyone knew who Norman was, and Norman is in fact a man named Norman Crosswell, and he's the owner of the guild hall. So they went and spoke with him. From that point, it became sort of a interrogation, and so they asked him questions about what he knew, when was the last time he had seen the tiefling guard, and they could tell through some decent insight checks as well as warcasting detect thoughts that he wasn't being entirely truthful, and that he was also concerned about getting rid of some information within his desk that would incriminate him. And so, oh, I believe Ward tried to charm Norman with, forget which spell he cast. He tried to charm him to get more information, but the spell failed because Norman was immune to the charm condition. And then Ward decided to probe deeper with his detect thoughts, and that's where he got the information that he was hiding something in the desk that he needed to get rid of. But it was at that point that Norman realized that he was also being read by Ward, and then Ward went ahead and declared he's hiding something in the desk, grab it, and then this individual grabbed his spear and shield from the wall behind him and prepared to defend himself, because it's about to become a combat encounter, and that's unfortunately where I had to end the first session because we were running out of time and we wanted to go eat dinner. But I left it on a nice cliffhanger, and we're going to continue from the end of that session when we play again on Sunday. So hopefully they're able to deal with that situation, because the last thing that I was able to reveal to them is that they were able to recall some info about Norman before he became the owner of this guild hall. He was a dragon rider from Dragonsmaw, and he had an unfortunate incident where his dragon died, and so he didn't have a dragon anymore, and he couldn't be a dragon rider, and so he came to Wispvalley and opened up a guild hall. But since then, he's been here, and then this situation has happened, which has led the party to his doorstep. And now it seems that they are about to engage in a fight. But I don't think it's going to go exactly how they think it's going to go, because it is not okay within the Society of the Valley to attack a Numitor. That is a federal offense. But I think they are expecting it to be a fight, and I'm going to try to do some interesting things with that. But basically, that was my first session of my new campaign. So I hope you all enjoyed that story. I plan on doing these videos every time we have a session, just to go over what happened and share the story, so that you guys can kind of experience everything that occurred with us. This was a long video, but it's good. I hope everyone enjoys it and likes the story. But yeah, I'll end up doing another one of these. I'll end up doing these every week that we play, just so I can get the story out. But until then, I appreciate everyone who watches this video. If you like what I do, please feel free to check out my Patreon. I have 3 different tiers on there. I think the first is $3, second is $5, and the third tier is $10. Each tier has its own rewards attached to it. I do a bunch of homebrew Dungeons & Dragons content on there, so you're not just paying me to support me, you're also getting some goodies out of it. So feel free to check it out. I do plan on doing a video at some point, doing a overview of my Patreon, just to engage my the people who are interested in my videos, show them what I'm offering, and hopefully gain some traction with that. So I appreciate everyone though. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.